Hi, everyone. I'm Cherie Blair, and I'm delighted to be here today to chat with Cara Goldin, the founder and CEO of Hint Inc., about her new autobiography, which I've read, and it's great, Undaunted. But first of all, a little bit about me and my own commitment to women's economic empowerment and entrepreneurship. In my life, I've done a number of things, but I am in particular a lawyer. And I'm a senior lawyer in the UK, which means I'm a Queen's Counsel. And yes, I have actually met the Queen, not least because my husband was Tony Blair, and he was Prime Minister for 10 years of the UK. But well before I met him, and still now, I'm also a huge campaigner for women's rights. And after we left Downing Street, I set up the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women in 2008. And our mission is to support women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries to build small and growing businesses so that they can be self-reliant, contribute to their economies, and have a stronger voice in their societies. Something, of course, Cara herself embodies. When I was married to the Prime Minister, I was lucky enough to travel the world, and I saw how important women entrepreneurs are for their families, for themselves, for their communities, and for the entire economy. And you know, for my whole life, I've been a self-employed lawyer and setting up my own firms and working online whilst trying to make a living while married to the Prime Minister. My foundation supports women entrepreneurs by giving them access to training, to confidence, and to networks through our services. We have a business skills learning app called Her Venture, which supports women entrepreneurs with the basic of business management. Our Road to Growth program is an intensive business course helping and sustaining women who've already got businesses to make them investment ready. And we also have a flagship Mentoring Women in Business program, which pairs women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries with a business mentor anywhere in the world. COVID, of course, has been a particularly difficult time for women entrepreneurs, and our annual audit report shows that nearly 4 in 10 women report their businesses will or may have to close as a result of the pandemic. So it's even more urgent now to be supporting women entrepreneurs. We have a huge 100,000 women campaign, and we're asking individuals and organizations to join and help us support another 100,000 women up to 2022 through a transformational donation or a partnership. You can find information about that on our website. But now, let me turn to the star attraction, Cara Goldin, a vocal supporter of the 100,000 Women campaign and herself an amazing woman entrepreneur. So, Cara,
thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. I mean, I've told a little bit about my story, but your story is amazing. Please tell us about how you went from executive to entrepreneur.
Well, thank you. It's such an honor to have you on here to kind of flip the situation and interview me for this. I really, really appreciate it. And everyone should go to the website and check out what Cherie and her foundation is doing, because they are globally supporting so many entrepreneurs, and especially in underprivileged areas where entrepreneurism is not even talked about, right? And it's really an incredible thing that you're doing. And so thank you for doing all of you do. So
tell me about you and your entrepreneurial journey.
Tell me about me. Tell everyone about me. So I started my company. This is sort of the flagship part of it. Hint, I've got it right here. The water company, which is an unsweetened flavored water. I had been a tech executive, thinking that I was probably going to remain a tech executive. But when I figured out that my health was not exactly what I wanted to see out of my health, I had developed terrible adult acne. My energy levels had gone down. And I had gained a bunch of weight over the course of many, many years. I, at the time, had 3 children when I left tech under the age of 4. Cherie and I both share 4 children, not together, but we each have 4 children. And so the commonality there. But I was really thinking for my family as well as myself that these sweeteners that were in my food and in my drinks were really not what I should be putting into my body. And so when I gave up my diet soda, which was kind of the biggest challenge that I had, was this can of diet soda. When I finally decided to swap it out for plain water, what I realized is that water for me was incredibly boring. I knew I should drink a lot of it, but it was very boring. So I didn't. And I relied on diet as being a healthy alternative. And when I gave it up, what I realized is that over the course of just a few weeks, I lost over 20 pounds. My skin cleared up and my energy levels went back. So the next step was I looked for this product and I thought, I'm going to go in the grocery store and try and find a product that is water with the taste of fruit and no sweeteners. And I was shocked that it wasn't in stores. I couldn't believe it. Everything either had sugar or these diet sweeteners. And so that's when I decided I should just go start this company. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I've already been a successful tech executive. I could always go back to that. And almost 16 years later, today in the US, we're the largest independent non-alcoholic beverage in the US that doesn't have a relationship with the big soda companies. So that is a little bit about my journey. And as you mentioned, I wrote a book highlighting it, not just about how to become a beverage executive, but also how to find your true passion. And Cherie, in many ways, you have as well. I mean, you're definitely a incredible attorney doing incredible stuff throughout Europe and the world. But in addition to that, your foundation has done so much good in the world too. So that's something that I think we need to encourage people to take a look at. And even when people maybe you've been furloughed or you've had to stay home with children during this time, what I encourage people to do is actually use this time and figure out, what exactly do I want to be doing? Am I defined by a certain industry, or is there something else that I could be doing?
You called yourself in the book an accidental entrepreneur. That story suggests that you may have fallen into being an entrepreneur, but tell me, how did that affect the path that you then took?
Sure. I think people have asked me for years, did you always know you were going to be an entrepreneur? And the answer is no. I mean, there were definitely signs, and I worked for incredible entrepreneurs over the early parts of my journey, but I didn't know that until I really found this problem and found a solution to that problem. So I think that that's another thing that I really want to emphasize to any person who's thinking, gosh, can I go and be an entrepreneur? You don't have to be a born entrepreneur. You just have to actually have a solution to a problem that you're trying to solve. And then the next step is actually to just go out and do it. Take steps towards doing it.
So you then took another step, of course, because you wrote a book, Undaunted. I've written a book too, and I know it's jolly hard work. So what was the hardest part about telling your story?
Well, this book started out as a journal. So I was journaling for almost 5 years. And what I would do is when I was out public speaking, I would get the Q&A at the end. And I almost used that as a prompt for me to write and kind of answer, not only when I was there live in the audience, but in addition, actually write down what else I could possibly talk about in answer to those questions. And so I had over 600 pages, Cherie. And that was probably the hardest thing, was actually editing it down to just over 200. And, it's fascinating because the book was turned in, the manuscript was turned in January of last year, right before the pandemic
Great
hit.
timing.
Great timing, right? But what I realized is that so many things, even that I talk about in the book, the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, and kind of we were a young company. We didn't have enough money in the bank. And it was a huge struggle. And so the minute that I saw that there was a challenge going on and that our company was, growing, huge growth mode, and again, being an essential product, we had to make sure that we were stocked on the shelves, and we didn't furlough any people in the company. And it was during this time that I really realized that all of the challenges in my journey actually helped me to make decisions. So the number one decision that I made was that we needed to raise money. And this was the end of March, and the US, smack in the middle of this pandemic where everybody's sheltering in place. And I said, we need to have 2 years of capital in the bank so that we can operate. And I remember my CFO saying to me, how are we going to do this? I mean, who's going to meet? Everybody's sheltering in place on Zoom. And I said, we cannot say that Zoom and use Zoom as a problem. We have to use technology to our advantage, and we have to figure out how to do that. And we did. And we raised enough money, enough capital for a couple of years. And so again, I think that going through these challenging times, instead of maybe feeling sorry for myself or not really understanding at the time why I was sitting in this position, do something about it in the future and know that maybe those are the challenging times that are really helping you to know what to do when you really need to.
Well, the subtitle of your book is Overcoming Doubts and Doubters, and you just basically told us a story about that, your determination to plow ahead and get things done. Tell me a bit more about a proud moment of overcoming a doubt or a doubter.
Well, I remember early on, it was probably a year into building Hint. I had 4 kids under the age of 6 at the time. I was not the profile of the entrepreneur that you thought was going to make it. And I was delivering cases in my car. My husband was helping me. And I thought, I don't know if I should really be doing this. I've left an incredible career, and now I'm doing something that I really feel has meaning, and that's really helping so many people get healthy, but it's really hard. And I don't know if I've got all the tools to be able to figure this out. Maybe if I just knew people who were experienced, then they would really be able to help in some way. So a friend of mine connected me with somebody very senior at that Atlanta soda company, Coca-Cola. And she said, maybe he can help you figure out how to get more shelf life on your product and also distribute your product throughout the US. And when I hopped on the phone with him, that's when I realized that about 15 minutes into the conversation, he said, sweetie, Americans love sweet. This product isn't going anywhere. And I thought, oh my, did he just call me sweetie? This is crazy. And I had never been called sweetie in my life. And it was at that moment that I just listened for the next 45 minutes and heard him share that this consumer that he was watching was really focused on calories, and that their goal was to move from 10 calories down to 0 calories. And so when we hung up the phone, I'm quite sure that he thought that I was going to give up and no longer do my company Hint. But it was at that moment when I thought, I've got a choice. And that when you are hearing these naysayers and doubters, you have to figure out if they're actually speaking to the same audience, that if you're talking about the same thing. For me, my whole purpose in starting this company was health. His purpose was to get down to 0 calories. And never in that 45 minutes did he actually talk about health. And so that's when I thought, we are on we're on 2 different rivers, and I need to continue down my river and do what I can do, because finally, I had customers. I wasn't a billion-dollar company. I had a lot less customer than Coca-Cola had, but I had customers that were sharing with me that Hint was helping them drink water. Hint was helping them control this new disease that I had never heard of 16 years ago called type 2 diabetes. And I thought, wow, I mean, just by giving people water without sweeteners, that's what's helping people stay healthy. So I felt like I had this responsibility to help people. And I'm sure you do as well, Cherie, where you're helping so many people. And what I share with people, if you can actually figure out something that you're going to spend a majority of your day doing that is helping people, there's nothing like it. It's a very powerful thing. And no matter how hard the days are, how many challenges you run into, that the customer, the audience, the people that are depending on you are the ones that are going to help you get through.
That is so true. But, you know, hearing you talk, you think, gosh, this woman is amazing. She's such a fearless person, you know, who's prepared to put herself out there and take risks. And yet, in fact, if you read the book, you talk a lot about your own doubts and fears. Something, by the way, which I doubt whether many men would do. But, you know, I'm pretty sure that it is very much part of the territory. And so it's good for people to hear that it's okay to have doubts and fears. But what's your advice to someone who is fearful of making a move that they really feel passionate about, but they feel, oh, what happens if it all goes wrong?
I think it boils down to the fact that people, and particularly women, don't want to look stupid. But I think it's men too, right? You don't want to look foolish. And so I think as I've watched people over the years, as you get older or you grow in your organization and become successful, that's actually the time that you should go take a risk, and you should go out and maybe put points where you're going to be a little bit afraid. And anytime you do something that you are not the most knowledgeable person in the room, that's scary, right? You're not used to being in that position. But instead, if you think, I'm going to go put myself into those positions and I'm going to go learn. I'm going to go learn about this and see whether or not my experience can actually bring impact. That's the mindset that you really need to get yourself into. And I also say this to, young university students and high school students as well. It's, why not go take a chance, right? Why not go out and do something if you do have an idea and you do believe that you are bringing something to the market that can add value in some way. And I think that that is really the most important thing to think about.
Now, I think it may, part of your story, of course, is about the fact that you are a mother with 4 kids. And I think for many women entrepreneurs that we work with, the reason they start their own business is because they want to control their own work-life balance. And, we know as an entrepreneur, it is difficult to achieve, but you also, of course, have a degree of control over your life. But, this issue about how you do work and life together, it's become even more acute, I think, during the COVID crisis, when we've seen so many women who are just about managing the balancing act because their kids were at school and they didn't have to homeschool, and they had people coming in and helping them with the cleaning or whatever it was, or their parents were able to come and help. Suddenly all that went, and we find with the women we work with, this is a very difficult issue. It's always difficult, but it's been particularly difficult over COVID. What's your advice about how you manage that work-life conundrum?
I think the most difficult part is actually finding something that you love, because so often people that I talk to have been in positions that they're on autopilot, right? They're just going to work, and then suddenly COVID hits and they've had to make a major adjustment. So use this time to actually figure out, what do you want to do? What is it that you, in a perfect world, and start brainstorming about it. I've heard from so many entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs that, they've never written a business plan. So therefore they could never go start a business. And I've asked them, do you know how to go on Google? Do you know how to go on YouTube? And they said, yes, of course I do. Then I said, then you can go and figure out how to write a business plan. Instead of putting up and creating your own walls of why you can't do something, figure out how you can do something and continue asking yourself that question. How can I do this? What can I do during this time? And I think that it, again, from the, work-life balance, and I really, I've always struggled with that because I do believe that if you figure out first what makes me happy and what is it that I feel like I can have impact towards, then I think your children will watch you and they will see that you're happy and they will see that you're fulfilled, and they will also learn along the way. And I mean, I have conversations with my kids all the time around water, clean water. You and I have talked about this initiative that I'm working on in Washington, and hoping that that's going to get, with the new administration, get more and more attention. But I think that my children are particularly interested in it. And it started with me 5 years ago when they would overhear conversations that I was having. So again, at the separation, I think, and particularly through COVID, when people are sheltering in place, is somewhat gone, right? You need to be able to do something that you're really passionate about. And if it's not tomorrow, have it in your mind as a goal of something that you really want to do and you want to figure that out.
Well, your book's called Undaunted, and it seems to me that you personify that. I mean, what does it mean to you to be undaunted, and why did you choose to call your book that?
So,
and what do you hope people will take away from your book?
Yeah, I mean, undaunted to me means it's a very purposeful word where you're going to go out and try. I mean, Cherie, you are the epitome of undaunted, right? You go out and do things that people think
foolish.
Or foolish, right? But that's the thing, that you cannot, these things don't just drop in your lap. And they are, I'm sure there are times even today, and certainly as you were building both of your careers, where it was a little scary. You weren't exactly sure that it was all going to work out. You had fears, you had failures along the way. But those were points in your journey that helped you to ultimately be who you are today and be able to articulate that to other people. So that is being undaunted, and knowing that we all need to be a little undaunted and continue to move forward and do the things that maybe people think are impossible. And I think my favorite thing is when people who doubted me and people who doubted my idea come back years later and say, I really didn't think that this was going to work out, right? I'm sure you've had the same thing. And it's the best. And know that those conversations will come later on in life if you just live undaunted.
Absolutely. Well, I think that there may be some people here listening. Oh, perfect. There's some questions. Let me tell you one, which is about what advice do you have for young entrepreneurs, at the beginning of their journey, about who are looking to start their own business rather than going in as you did to a company first and then going into business.
So I think it starts with having an idea and having a solution to an idea. And oftentimes that can't be rushed. And so what I share with people is there's nothing wrong with going into an organization and actually understanding how things work. I happen to grow up with my father started a business inside of a large company. And he, frankly, was always complaining about the large food company. And so I learned a lot of things just by kind of hearing and sort of in some ways living inside vicariously through his own experiences. And so again, I think that if you don't have that idea, don't launch something that you don't think is actually going to work.
For the sake of it. Yeah.
Right. And I think that being an entrepreneur too is this very, elaborate, wonderful thing to so many people that they don't really see how hard it is, and the hours and the, no pay, especially in the beginning. And so there are aspects of it that are really rewarding, but there are also aspects that you really have to wait until you have that great idea.
Well, thanks to Megan for that question. Well, we're waiting to see if anyone else has a question. Let me ask you, what do your kids, I mean, they were young when you started. How old are they now? What do they think of their mum?
Yeah, I have 3 in university, and it's interesting. They're people always ask me, are they going to be entrepreneurs? I don't know, but I think what I do see in them is that they are very interested in doing something that they're passionate about. And I've probably said that. I say that on a daily basis to them, right? That figure out what you're going to be passionate about. It doesn't mean that you don't do something else to pay the bills, right? And that's an important aspect. But instead, figure out what you really want to do. I talked about this in a LinkedIn post the other day. My son, who is 19 years old, has restored 3 BMWs, and he's obsessed with restoring BMWs, not for the sake of selling them. Unfortunately, I have too many cars in my driveway at the moment. He loves collecting them, but he loves the inner workings of, he turned an automatic transmission into a manual transmission, and it's everything about the work and that he really becomes passionate about. And so he's trying to figure out if he could actually do something around BMWs, or maybe some other car. He's only worked on BMWs that really helps him to live. And I said, I don't know, because I don't know that much about cars, but you should figure out how to do that. And anyway, people really responded on LinkedIn about that. They said that is amazing, and that's great that you're pushing him to, go and figure it out too, because again, he's still going to school. He wants to be in school, but he's thinking outside of the box. And it's certainly not what any of his other friends are thinking about either. And he does not, have friends with the same passions. But I said, it doesn't matter. You have to figure out what's best for you.
Well, maybe David Scanlon's got the question, which your son might have to think about, which is that, do you need capital to start a business? Did you have any initial investors, or did you have the money yourself? I mean, money and entrepreneurship really go together, don't they? I mean, you can have an idea, but you also need capital.
Absolutely.
Any advice about that?
Absolutely. I mean, I used savings initially, and also had good credit going in. So the credit card companies were my friends, very good friends for the first couple of years, and I was sure to make those payments while I was trying to figure out exactly what I needed. But I think that that's another wall that people put up, that you often don't need as much capital as maybe you think you do. You hear entrepreneurs raising 50, $100 million and getting these billion-dollar valuations. There's a lot of other small businesses and brand new startups that you don't need that much capital. And sometimes people even want to start a business, and they'll come to me and ask for my advice about raising money. And if you never want to sell the company, then you might be able to figure out how do you float that capital, and are you bringing in revenue? Are you sure you're going to be getting that revenue coming in? So I think that that's another thing really to think about it. No one business is exactly the same.
I think we find often, actually, with businesses run by women, that many of them actually do self-fund, or with families and friends. Partly, of course, and we find this particularly in the women we're working with in lower middle income countries, women aren't always taken seriously, or they're seen as more risky to invest in, or maybe they're just sweeties, as you were called. So often, using your own resources, it can be tough, but it also gives you a great deal of strength, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's something really important to think about too, that I think that you're not relying on other people, right? As women, you're going out and starting your own business. And again, I can't, overemphasize that. Start small, take small steps, that is really the first step. And of course, have an idea and et cetera. But I think that that's really, really critical. I think that the other thing that is often overlooked for entrepreneurs is the ability to actually get the right people in. And those people may change over time because as you're scaling, you may have different needs for the company. But I think that the people are really what ultimately make a company too. So many entrepreneurs do not have the ability to actually get the right team in place in order to help them really do what they need to do. And that's really, really important.
Well, Abby Sawcast, I mean, when you started out, how did you keep yourself motivated? How did you get up in the morning and overcome the challenges you were facing?
Yeah. It's a great question, Abby. I think the key thing is that it's really continuing to celebrate the wins, right? And celebrate the small steps along the way, because you're going to run into challenges and things that didn't go the way that you wanted to, but instead having those little wins inside your head where maybe things didn't go great today, but they went really great a couple of days ago. And so search for those next wins and really focus on what else can you do in order to make progress. And sometimes too, people will have big goals for something. And I say to people, it's great to have a goal, but if you can have a couple of little wins along the way, that's really what will help you, especially when you're trying to do some really challenging things.
It helps keep you undaunted by the challenges, yeah?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, what other advice would you give to a young person? Well, actually, or even, we shouldn't assume that you start as an entrepreneur, that's the first thing you do. What advice would you give to someone who maybe has been in a career for 20 or 30 years and is finding themselves stale? Could entrepreneurship be an answer for them?
Absolutely. I think that especially if you've got some savings, maybe you're, not learning. I think that that's another thing that I talk about a lot is when I was leaving tech, for me, it wasn't that I had a bad experience. It's that I wasn't really learning as much. And so often people forget that being a lifelong learner is really about being human, right? And along the way. And I think it's if you've had a career that maybe you didn't love, or maybe you were successful and maybe you are successful, now's the time to go and do that side hustle on weekends, start to write out the business plan, start to really research it and figure out whether or not it's doable, because we've all got ideas and things that maybe we want to do or wish that we would have done. And you certainly don't want to try thinking about those things and regret it when it's too late.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. You don't want to end up at the end of your career thinking, if only I'd done that.
Well, this is amazing, Cherie. I really, really appreciate you coming on and asking me all these great questions, and everybody as well. I really appreciate everybody coming and asking so many questions. And Cherie, where do people find you on besides your website? Are you on social media?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn. I see there's not a LinkedIn here. I mean, I'm a big LinkedIn person. So yes, our website and the foundation's on LinkedIn, but I'm also personally on LinkedIn. So I'll see you on that.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have to
and I'll see you soon for sure.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it and appreciate everybody coming by. And we do this actually, Cherie, not interviewing me, but interviewing many, many other authors for this series every week. So everybody should definitely sign in and try and figure and try and see the different great authors that we're going to have.
Fantastic. It's a great idea.
Thank
and remember,
you.
Stay undaunted.
Stay undaunted and stay healthy. And goodbye to everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.